Thank you. Lorraine, how's the chat room?
The chat room is chiming in right now from all over the world. We have wonderful people representing Morocco. Moroccan is joining in and says good morning to everybody. We have TX Tim saying loud and clear here in Texas. And Buzzard02 is joining in from Morgan Hill, California. We have New Hampshire, Melbourne, Australia. Ali, good morning. And let's see, we have Germany, Palm Beach, Florida, and I also saw Dubai. I see quite a few people in here in the chat rooms that are tuning in from yesterday. So thank you for coming back and welcome again. And those of a lot of you guys are new. I haven't seen your names before, so just want to say welcome to Creative Live.
Absolutely. Welcome to everyone who's new. We love having you join us, and we hope you will check out our calendar and kind of see some of the upcoming workshops and what might interest you in those. So we still have a couple minutes, Lorraine. Tell me, what was your takeaway from yesterday? What was the biggest thing that you pulled out of it?
My favorite, well, kind of a little bit from everybody that you guys were saying yesterday was the laughter, keeping it light and fun. Anything that can go wrong is going to go wrong, so just keeping your cool and being able to kind of go with the flow, working spontaneously, and always leaving room for more creativity with other people on set, bringing in some other people that might bring new, fresh energy, that might have a different rapport with your subject, always allowing others to kind of create with you and being open to that idea.
Absolutely, yeah. I loved when we were able to bring other people in and just enjoy that creative juice and that atmosphere that just inspires the creativity. I love it. So I think we are about ready to get started here. So welcome again. This is day 2 of Compositing 101 with Aaron Nace here on Creative Live. I'm going to do a quick intro on Creative Live and how to watch today's class, how to ask questions in chat, and how to purchase the course videos. When you go to watch Creative Live, you do it at one place, and that is creativelive.com/live. That page is going to be good for your iPad, your iPhone, your Android device, any mobile device. You're going to want to go just directly to creativelive.com/live. This is the page you'll see when you go to that address, and at the top of that page, and on the top of every page on our site, you will see a little button that says Watch. If you select that button, you'll get a drop-down with multiple options whenever we have multiple courses streaming at once. So select the course you want to watch by selecting that button. Lower on the page, below the video stream, you'll see a Buy Now button. That's where you can buy this course if you'd like to be able to have anytime access to it in the future. You can also see on the left-hand side under the video stream the Click to Chat button. Go ahead and click that button to join in on the worldwide conversation between you and all your fellow students around the world who are watching this workshop. When you do click that, a new window will pop open with 3 chat rooms in it. Let me tell you about those chat rooms. First one is Creative Live. Creative Live is for your on-topic discussion. That is any discussion that is related to the subject being taught here during this workshop, which is compositing. So go ahead and keep that conversation on topic and leave everything else to the other 2 rooms. We've got Creative Cues. This is where you can ask questions for Mr. Nace. Lorraine and I have a wonderful, amazing team who are going to be collecting your questions and passing them on to us to ask Aaron. So go ahead and preface your questions with a cue and tell us where you're coming from. That way we can give you a little shout out when we ask your question. And make sure to keep that just the questions. Any discussion of those questions or answers of them can be done in that live tab. Creative Lounge, that's where you can go to have fun, talk about off-topic discussions, what you're eating, what you're drinking at the time, and just have fun in there, joke around. Keep it nice and positive, obviously, but that is where you can have your off-topic discussion. You can also ask questions via social media. We have a Facebook page at facebook.com/creativelive. You can ask questions there. You can also ask questions on Twitter with the hashtag AaronLive. Now, this is Compositing 101 with Aaron Nace, and the way that we work here at Creative Live is we offer you the ability to watch these courses for free live as we're recording them. If you want access to those recordings, to be able to watch these videos at your leisure, to rewind, to watch any sections that you may have missed, we'll ask you to purchase the course. The course costs $149. If you buy it before the end of the workshop, we offer it for only $99, which is an amazing deal that we are happy to be able to offer. So if this is a course that you feel that you will want to be able to review later, to rewatch those segments, to laugh again, and to be able to understand the math that goes into all of these composites, go ahead and purchase this course. When you do, and you go to the course page, this is what it'll look like. On the left, this is where you can enroll in the course, and you can also, that will give you reminder emails about the course, and you can also purchase the course there in addition to below this video stream on the live page. Lower on the course, this is where any course bonus materials will be, and I'm sure we will talk about those later. This will also be where the videos are that are created during these 3 days. You have two options when you want to watch these videos. You can do so by downloading low-res or HD versions to your computer, and you can also watch by streaming them directly from our website. We love to give stuff away here at Creative Live, and we will do so multiple times throughout the day. If you want to join in, you can do so on Facebook or via Twitter. On Twitter, you're going to want to enter with the @AKNacer quote, and those are quotes from Aaron that are funny or are really good tips or just things you want to take away from the course. You'll also want to include the course URL, which you can see on your screen right now. That is a URL that we search on to find your quotes, so be sure to include that URL in your tweet. And with that, I think we're about ready to bring on the man himself, Mr. Aaron Nacer. Now I'm talking about your Twitter handle. Aaron Nace founded Phlearn.com in 2011. He's an amazing photographer, and he's here to teach you Compositing 101, so let's bring him on. Aaron, come on out.
Thanks, Russ.
Welcome, my friend. How are you doing?
Awesome.
Good. And how was your experience yesterday?
We had a lot of fun. Did you guys have fun?
Yes.
It was insane. I think we got some really interesting things that I totally couldn't have planned on. Jasper in the pool was probably the funniest thing I've seen in a long, long time.
I think that's pretty much a Creative Live moment that will live on for quite a while.
He's got to go on to become an actor because he just nailed it, and I could not stop laughing.
That was my favorite thing about Jasper, is that he was just somebody's friend. He was just a producer's friend. He was not an actor. He was just an awesome guy. So yeah.
That was totally unexpected, and I think it really did. It made the shot, but it also created the energy around the composite, which is it's something fun, because with compositing and with coming up with these crazy ideas, you get to do things that you wouldn't normally do. On a normal day, you don't get to fill a pool with milk, and you don't get someone bathing themselves in it. That just doesn't happen in real life.
If you do, I want your life, because
Yeah.
that's exciting. But I am totally excited for today to see what you're going to do with this amazing set that our set designer Kaleo put together. Kaleo, thank you. This was amazing. So we are excited to see what happens, and I'm going to let you go ahead and do that.
Right on.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're back on set today. We have our super, what was hidden set yesterday. No one could see what's going on. And we actually have a complete laundromat behind us, which is insane. This is all brought in. We're in a studio right now. Everything you see behind me was custom built for the shoot, and I feel really special to have everything brought in here for our concept. So I do want to talk about a couple of things before we begin. And here in section 1, what we're going to be doing is mostly kind of talking about the concept. We're going to be talking about the development of the shot. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, and then we're going to go ahead and start shooting for the day. So yesterday was a blast, and what we did was one type of compositing, and that's the element compositing. Now today is going to be totally different. We're going to be doing a different type of compositing, and that's frame compositing. So I'll just talk to you guys for a second, because it sounds like you guys should learn this. But element compositing is basically when you take different elements and you combine them together. So for instance, yesterday we had the Sarah with the cereal bowl, and then with our concept we said, well, okay, we need someone in this giant pool of milk. So we got that element as well, and then we shot the sandals and the towel and things like that. So that's one type of compositing. And in a way, that's a little bit more difficult than what we're going to be doing today. Each of these things has their difficulties during the photo shoot and during Photoshop. So I'd recommend, that one is a little bit more difficult during the photo shoot itself. But this one, what we're going to be doing today, is just a little bit easier. And today is called frame compositing. And basically, here's the goal today. Everything that we're going to be putting into the frame, we're not bringing in extra elements. I'm not photographing anything on a white background or anything like that. Every single thing that's going to happen today during the composite is going to happen right in front of your face. So it's a really, really cool way to do compositing. And this is, no matter what your guys' skill level, right where you're at right now, you're going to be able to do frame compositing. It's really not that hard. What we're doing here, we're tricking a couple things. We can trick things like gravity. We can trick things like time. We can trick things like, is are these people going to be interacting with one another? So today we're actually going to be pulling off some levitation, which is going to be sick, and I can't wait for it. Levitation it seems like something that might be really hard to do in photography, but it's actually not that hard. And the only thing you need to know how to do is frame compositing, which is all day today we're covering frame compositing. So you guys are going to see basically the entire process. It's going to be, here on set, and you'll be able to see the whole thing. And then tomorrow we're going to go into Photoshop, and I'm going to show you really how easy it is to bring everything together using frame compositing. So I am so excited. Before we get started with today, there are a couple things that I wanted to talk about. And the first is just kind of like a message of inspiration. Last night we went out to dinner with some friends with the Creative Live crew, and I don't remember how it came up, but someone was like, "You're pretty weird, Aaron." And I was like, "Yeah, I am pretty weird." And it's taken me almost my whole life. I've heard that a lot, by the way. Girls and guys and, people I respect. And a lot of people have told me that. Kids never tell me that because kids are weird and they're cool with it. They like someone who's weird. But it got me thinking, and it's easy to take the defensive when someone says you're weird. It's easy to take the defensive and be like, "I'm not that weird." But, last night we were just having a great time and no one meant anything, but I was like, J.R.R. Tolkien is pretty weird. Like The Hobbit and dragons and trolls, like that's pretty weird. Like Hansel and Gretel, these fairy tales, these things we grow up with, like that's weird. Like it's not at all normal. And it just got me thinking, like, the weird people and the people who embrace being weird and having these crazy ideas and then having like the guts to say, yeah, I'm weird and I'm gonna go do these crazy ideas. They're usually the people who wind up changing the world, and usually the people who wind up giving us these amazing stories and bits of culture that we then shape our lives around and we learn about in school. So if those of you, I'm not trying to tell you guys, if you are not on the weird spectrum, I'm not trying to tell you guys to go be someone you're not. But if you are, if you feel like, yeah, you're a little bit weird, embrace that, do those things that you feel are a part of you. And that's really the only thing that I've done throughout my entire career as a photographer is I've embraced the weird. I've had crazy, wacky ideas. What we did yesterday, we put a guy in a giant pool of milk and had to wash it up. And that's weird. It's totally weird. But it was so much fun. And it's just a little bit out of the ordinary. And I think that's the only reason why I'm here, to be honest, in front of Creative Live, is because I've had these weird ideas and then I've pulled them and actually brought them to life. I think that if I had done more run-of-the-mill photography, I don't think that I would have been here. So that's just my little message of inspiration and hopefully encouragement. If you guys are weird and you guys have that little thing inside you, embrace it. Embrace the weird and make things awesome happen. So
I just want to make one note really quick because I saw this coming up in the chat room. For people who want to see the final composite from yesterday, we'll actually be doing that tomorrow. We'll be taking the images from yesterday and today and doing the final full composite, going through all of the post-processing tomorrow. So just want to make sure that people are aware who were excited to see the final composite. Tune in tomorrow to see.
Totally, yeah. So day 1 and day 2 is all about the photo shoots themselves, and then tomorrow is Photoshop, which a lot of people were kind of curious about because it was, everyone says, oh, they hear compositing and they think, okay, it's all going to be in Photoshop. Why are we even doing a photo shoot? And what they realize is it's a lot more what happens in the photo shoot. If you want a very hard job in Photoshop, then you rely on Photoshop. But if you want your job in Photoshop to become easy, then you do your work on the photo shoot, and it's just going to make the job a lot easier in Photoshop. And it's also going to make the end image a lot better. So you don't have to be an amazing Photoshop artist or creator. You don't have to use it for years and years and years. You can be comfortable with your skills as a photographer and then bring those together with a couple simple techniques that I'm going to show you guys tomorrow in Photoshop. It's going to be awesome. All right, you guys ready? We're going to talk about today. It's going to be very, it's going to be wacky. It's going to be cool. It's going to be weird. We're going to have a lot of fun. We have a sketch. I think maybe we could bring it up on the screen of today. And again, you guys can lay witness to my amazing sketch skills. And it looks like from your faces, you have no idea what this is. That's okay, because I'm going to explain it to you. Okay, so today's concept is called, I just scribbled on there Wash and Suds because it'd be funny, but it's called Love at the Wash and Suds. And it's a double love story. These don't really exist in nature. I've created a double love story, and it's really going to be an amazing image and a cool concept. Basically, here's the whole idea behind our double love story, which is the love at the Wash and Suds. A guy is coming in the morning to a laundromat and decides he's going to clean his clothes. So he's going to be using these laundry bins, or whatever they're called, washing machines, some might call them, behind us. And basically he's coming in the morning and he's about to do his laundry, and he's using this like off-brand of laundry detergent. So he's coming in and his clothes see the laundry detergent that he's about to use, and they decide to rebel against them. They're saying, we're not using this crappy laundry detergent, we want something better. So literally his clothes like come out of the washing machine and pick him up and push him over to another side of the room where there's, of course, a gorgeous girl, and she's holding the proper brand of laundry detergent, which is Wash and Suds, which we made for this tutorial. So it's a double love story. It's the story behind the clothes finding the proper laundry detergent that they actually want to be washed with, and they're also introducing our guy hero to our girl hero, and then they fall in love. So double love story in one image with levitation and flying clothes in the air at a Wash and Suds that was specifically built for this photo shoot. So it's going to be wild. You guys excited? It's going to be really, really cool. So we're going to bring everything together. So like yesterday, you guys were probably able to see, and for those of you guys who are just tuning in today, make sure you check out yesterday. And if you haven't, you can pick it up. I think it's on sale right now, right? $99, which is a pretty awesome price. So basically yesterday we brought all those elements together, and we had some of it kind of like thought out, and like our lighting was already set up when Sarah was on set. Today is going to be kind of like a different pace. We're going to be taking you, it's going to be more instruction, especially when it comes to lighting and posing and working with models. It's going to be, I'm going to instruct the entire thing. As you guys can see me, I don't know, maybe the cameras can come up. All this lighting that's up here, I didn't do any of this. This is actually all set up for the video the video feed that you guys are watching right now to make me look really pretty, which they needed a lot of light to do, by the way. So this is not going to be affecting our photograph. What we're going to be doing is using fast shutter speeds that are really not going to have any of this light, this continuous light, affect our image. What we're going to be doing is using strobe light to affect our image, and that light, if you do use strobes, you can outpower the light like this, continuous lighting. So that's going to be our goal today. We're going to outpower this and start completely from scratch. So a totally different way of teaching today, because we don't have anything set up. Like you can see, there's not a softbox with a strobe over here. There's nothing set up today. So the idea and the goal is to take you through the entire process from start all the way to finish on how we're actually going to build this concept and how we're going to put everything together. Not only that, but we're going to focus on some of the important things when it comes to compositing and how you actually should or maybe could light something like that to make sure you get your point or your concept across. So do we have any questions about today before we rock on? Very cool. So the first section is very cool. We're not actually going to be bringing our subjects or anything like that into the scene during the first section. We're going to be talking about our lighting and building up the scene and getting everything ready for the concepts. There are a couple of things before we go ahead and start off. And remember yesterday we talked about during the photo shoot, before you start the photo shoot, how a sketch can kind of determine a few things like camera angles, it can determine maybe your aperture, it can determine your shutter speed and things like that. We're basically doing the same thing today. We're looking at the sketch and figuring out things like maybe our shutter speed. We've got some levitation going on, which means that we need to pretty much freeze action, especially if these clothes are going to be flying in the air, and some of you guys are going to be throwing clothes in the air later, which is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be basically throwing these things in the air and freezing some motion. We've got a little bit of levitation going on, and we need to freeze motion for that. So can we use a slow shutter speed, or do we have to use a fast shutter speed? Exactly. We got to use a fast shutter speed, and that's going to freeze that motion. So if we were using ambient light, something like this, if it was very bright and you're doing this on location, you could probably pull it off. Maybe shoot at 1/500th of a second. What we're going to be doing today is shooting at 1/160th of a second, and we're going to be using strobes to actually freeze that action. So from just a sketch and basically our environment, I can figure out my shutter speed, which is pretty amazing. Now we can see behind me, we do have some really nice detail here that our set builder built. Kaleo did an amazing job. All this detail behind me, I don't want it too out of focus as well. So we're probably going to be shooting at maybe f5.6 or f8. We're going to be shooting with a relatively wide angle lens as well, because I want to make sure we have all this in the background. Now, the original sketch was going to be at an actual laundromat or something like that, with this is a row of washing machines, in case you couldn't tell. Today, it's going to be on set, so we have a little bit of a different atmosphere, and that's going to actually wind up changing our concept just a little bit. The concept's going to stay the same, just the actual interaction between the subjects that's going to wind up changing. So that's what we can get out of the sketch, and we're going to go ahead and start bringing it in. So we've got the camera, basically it's right over here, and it's at a rough camera angle that's capturing what we've got here. So we're going to start off, and I'm going to actually build this from completely nothing. I would love some suggestions from you guys, some suggestions from the people at home, and this is what it's all about. So today, it's just really going to be a cool learning experience, and frame compositing means unlimited possibilities. So our subjects are not going to be in the same place all day. They're not going to be doing the same thing all day. They're going to be doing a lot of different things, and we're going to capture every one of those moments and just pick and choose our favorites. Not only that, we're not having 2 subjects in frame today. I think we're going to have 5 or 6 people in this frame. We're having people in the background, and they're going to be doing all kinds of things. We're going to be doing amazing stuff with lighting. We've got a really cool idea. This is actually a lamp that's just hanging. They can probably zoom up and see I don't even think it's plugged in. I mean, there's no light bulb or anything in this thing. And what's really cool is we're going to actually light this. We're going to make it look like it's a light done with our strobes. And I'm going to show you guys how to use frame compositing to basically take care of this type of element, where you can kind of make this look like it actually is a light source, even though it's not a light source. That's just including maybe you have a softbox on set during something, if a subject's here and you need them lit a little bit better, you put a softbox on them, then you take a frame with the softbox out of there and you composite those together later. We're also going to be doing a little bit of rough compositing as well, kind of bringing these elements together. So I think we're ready to get started. You guys ready to do it? Awesome. We want to come on. John and Julia are amazing technical assistants and lighting assistants, and we're going to go ahead and
come out here and embrace the weird.
Embrace the weird. Oh, I love it. Come on, Julia, let's embrace the weird. That's awesome. Did that touch you?
Oh, yes.
I came pretty close to crying at one point. I was like, I should stay positive with this. But yeah,
just so you know, Aaron, there were a lot of people in the chat room who were also chiming in saying that they were crying because of how they agreed with you and you were already touching them. So you're not alone.
It's awesome. Yeah, I did come close to crying. Sorry, I'm a very passionate individual, and I think my passion comes through, especially yesterday with Jasper and having fun there. But if we talk about sentimental stuff, I can really kind of go off. Yeah. So
Brent said that he was logging in to pretty much say that Aaron's little speech then was fantastic. And Jay Vincent said, major thank you to Aaron for embracing the weird and for reminding us that it's okay. Day 2 has been on for maybe 9 minutes, and Aaron has totally just made me cry.
It's awesome. By the way, side note, the last time I watched Wreck-It Ralph, I was on an airplane, and I cried at the end. When he sacrifices himself for the good of his friends. I'm a big sucker, but it's okay. I just admitted to thousands of people that I cried during Wreck-It Ralph. That's weird, and whatever, but it's...
Things happen on Creative Live.
Things happen.
Okay.
Without that side of things, and without that weird, and without embracing that, we wouldn't have things like this, and we wouldn't have what we did yesterday. So there's room for it all, I believe. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to build the lighting from nothing. So like we said earlier, we're going to be bringing basically this image completely to life. And we're going to be using a relatively fast shutter speed. So I'm going to go ahead and dial those settings in my camera. And like we said, guys, today it's going to be at a different pace from yesterday. Yesterday was fast paced. We were boom, 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 boom. Today it's going to be a little bit slower. We're going to focus a little bit more on instruction. And literally, I don't know where the light's going to go. This is not staged, I promise. But have I told you where any lights are going to go? No. We don't know. So we're going to figure it out during the actual photo shoot. And this is going to be so helpful for you guys, as long as you have the patience to see it through, because you'll be able to see the entire process of what light does he start with first? What light does he start with, come up with second? Where do these thoughts come from? So keep in mind, today is a lot more about the process, and I think if you keep that in mind, you'll get a lot more out of the day. So I'll probably try to remind you guys of that a couple times. So I'm going to come on back here, and the camera is set up. It's on a tripod today. Now, when shooting frame compositing, it's very, very important that you do keep the camera on a tripod, because we have so many different elements happening, actually going to be going on in our frame, that if I move the tripod, I won't be able to do the compositing very simply in Photoshop afterwards. I don't want to do complex, using the pen tool and cutting people out. Like, that's not our goal. Our goal is to make it easy in Photoshop. So as long as the camera stays on a tripod, your settings stay the same, your focus is locked, everything like that, frame compositing is going to be very, very easy. So I'm going to go ahead and take a picture. Now, I already know that I want to freeze some action. So we're going to put us into manual mode here. And I'm going to shoot, we're going to go to something like, I don't want our lights to be incredibly bright. I don't need like a lot of power out of my lights, especially because I want to do a little bit of rapid fire. So if I go to full power with my lighting, it's going to take a little bit longer to do recycle time and things like that. So I'm going to shoot at something like 5.6. Now, I'm also going to shoot at 1/160th of a second, and that's going to get us very fast shutter speed. That's the max sync speed with the 5D Mark II. If you guys are using like some Nikon cameras, they'll sync up to 250th of a second. Someone said, was it John? You said that 5D3
is about 125.
1/25th of a second.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you guys are using strobes, the really cool thing to keep in mind is that with strobes, they really will do a great job freezing motion, because the duration of the light, it's kind of like, have you ever been in like a nightclub or something like that, and you see like the strobe lights, and you're kind of like walking through, but you only see like flickers of a person or something like that? These strobe lights are basically the same thing. So if you have a shutter speed that's 1/160th, that's not really going to freeze the motion. But if the only light that's hitting your subject is happening during a very short burst, something like what's going on with our strobes, that's what's going to freeze your motion. So think of these like strobes that we're using as strobe lights. Obviously, your eyes are always on in in like a dance club. I don't remember the last time I was in a dance club. It's probably in Sweden and studying abroad in college, but we'll talk about that later. But basically, you see the small bursts of light, and that's what freezes the motion. So it's the same idea here. Our small freezes of light from our strobes, that's what's actually going to freeze our motion. So we're at 1/160th of a second here, shooting at 5.6, and I'm just going to change my ISO down to ISO 100. Now, we're also shooting with our white balance here. It's going to be in the flash setting, and that's going to set us up for 5600 degrees Kelvin, which is matching for daylight, basically, which is what our strobes balance at as well. And our focus, I'm not too worried about it right now because our subjects aren't in there, but once we do, we're going to focus on where our subjects are going to be, and we're going to make sure that we lock that in place. Now, I'm just going to choose our rough focal distance here, just kind of zooming in and moving some things around. There we go. And I'm going to take a picture, and I don't really expect this to be lit at all. So we'll take a picture, and let's see how it looks. Probably is going to be black. That's just my complete guess. Pretty close to it. Yeah, so this is how you create magic, guys. Just do this, and then Photoshop it to make it look good. No, but we can see here, this is all we've got. So this is the amount of ambient light that's coming into our scene right now. So everything that we're going to do this image, we're going to build up from completely dark. Now, this is actually even a little bit more light than I thought we would have, and it's probably due to the lights that we have on set here. Now, when I'm shooting on location, it's a little bit different from what's going on here. On location, I'll use the natural light from a scene and match my strobes to that natural light. But in this case, since we are in a studio, I want to basically build it all completely from scratch. And it wouldn't make sense to have these lights be the light that actually lights our laundromat, because they're placed for the video. So it looks good for me standing here, but obviously they're not designed to look good in the laundromat. So we basically see a very dark scene, and so we're going to start building from there. Now, we've got one light here, and this is actually a video light that's we can see kind of in the background. So if we wanted to actually, I don't even know, will that raise up, John, you think, a little more?
Which is that?
It's the video light that's right there, and it's on a light stand that's back there.
Yeah, I could probably.
All right. If not, we could always either Photoshop that out or change our crop and just come down a little bit. We've got a little bit of video lights and things like that here. Either way, that's not really a big deal. All right, so let's go ahead and start it off. I want to hear your guys' suggestions on how we should get this to be great. And does anyone we'll do a raise of a hand. What's the first light we should start off with? Where should we put it, and maybe what should it be?
Well, I always like to start with the key.
You start with the key light.
Yeah.
Okay.
So all depends where the subjects are going to be, whether they're going to be in front of the washing machines or whether they're going to be off to the side. So once we determine that, then we could set our key.
Set a key, and that's a really great way to start. So for those of you guys who are unfamiliar, a key light is basically going to be the main light on your subject. So usually if it's a portrait, it's probably going to be a beauty dish or something like that. If it's a larger environmental portrait, maybe you can see a whole person, be a large octabox, something like that. If it's a very large, you can even use like V-flats like we used yesterday to be a key light as well, if you're looking for something that's going to be very broad and even. So we did figure out our subjects are going to be right about here. Our guy subject, this is probably going to be open. We've got some clothes that are going to kind of come around and fly around here, and he's going to be kind of in the air right over here. And then our girl is going to be right here. So I think we should start with the key light. Let's go ahead and do it. What do you think?
Doctor?
I think we should start off with a strip box.
Strip box.
And I'll explain why. Okay. Here's why we should start off with a strip box. And this isn't, I don't usually use a strip box as a key light. It's kind of like a, it's usually used for something like a rim light. But there are two reasons why I want to use a strip box as a key light. The first reason is I want to kind of imitate what would be fluorescent lighting, like a long, thin tube of fluorescent lighting. I kind of want to imitate that because we're in a laundromat. That kind of makes sense that the overhead lighting would be like long, thin tubes. The other reason is that I kind of want like a relatively hard shadow. So we have some levitation. There's going to be clothes flying in the air and things like that. And the best way to make that really believable when you're doing any type of like levitation is to not only have your object that's floating in the air, but its shadow. The shadow is a huge part of that. And because we're not going to be photoshopping shadows here, these are going to be real shadows, I want to make sure that they're well defined and then they actually show up. So I'm using a little bit of a smaller light source that's going to produce a little bit of a harder shadow so we can actually see that shadow in the shots. So if we could get maybe one of our Einsteins.
Okay.
We have some Einsteins today and we have some Alien Bees. I trust the Einsteins a little bit more. They're a little bit newer, a little bit higher build quality. So for a key light, I would definitely recommend using the highest quality lights you have. Fill light, if it misfires once or twice or something like that, that's probably fine. So we'll get an Einstein going on with one of our strip boxes here. Yeah, let's get it up above. Let's bring the ladder out.
Okay.
Totally cool. I'm throwing a wrench in the production. Ladder's on set. What's going on? We've also got this really nice grid right above us, which normally you probably would not have. If you were actually shooting in a laundromat or something like that, you probably wouldn't have a giant grid above you. Since we do have one, we're going to be using it. Why not? So we're going to use a super clamp and clamp our light onto the grid here. And then, we've got power run already. Right on. Thank you, John. So we've got power run, and we're going to be clamping our light onto the super clamp up here, and then kind of adjusting power and everything going from there. So it's totally like you guys are here for literally the entire process. Can we hear some stuff from the audience? Is this cool? Are you guys excited? Okay, cool. So it's a totally like different, it's a total switch from yesterday, right? But yeah, do you have a comment, Miguel?
No, I was just checking to see if anybody else had one. I am shocked at how this is going to come out. This is like big production here, so it's going to be awesome.
Very, very cool. I'm shocked too. Oh, I will be shocked because I don't know. And this is basically how every photo shoot starts, right? This is usually going on in your head. You don't really know what's going to happen by the end of it, right? It's going to be like, I think this is going to look good. But what's going to happen today, some of the lights we set up, they're going to look great. And some of the things that we do, it's going to look horrible. But that's the whole part of the process, right? Some of the things we're going to be doing, and I'm just going to be like, that looks really bad. Let's change it. But that happens during every single photo shoot. So I'm going to do my best job to identify when things don't look exactly right, as well as change those things and explain why we're making those changes and why they don't look exactly right. So that's, I hope, what's going to be the best learning technique during today is like explaining when some things might not go exactly right and how to make them go right. All right. We can grab a pocket wizard as well.
Yep.
To make sure our light is going to fire. There should be some in my camera bag, or there's probably some actually attached to the lights.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull this ladder out a little bit so we can see our beautiful hosts. How's that?
That's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Like you said.
You liked how I was not discreet about that at all, right?
No, of course not. Thank you. So What is the kind of just general lighting strategy that you're going for here? Are you going for more harsh light than we did yesterday, or going for, just...
Hey there. That's a really good question. When I do lighting and things like this, I usually use references. So I do have some references that I've pulled. Unfortunately, we don't have these on the screen, but we're going to be using a somewhat similar technique to what we did yesterday. We're going to be using generally soft lighting. I do want to fill in my shadows pretty well. Again, because this is supposed to be like a commercial type of image. It's not necessarily like a fine art type of image. So I do want to fill in my shadows and make sure we have like a bright, airy image. But I do want those hard lights, and you get them with, everyday natural lighting. So it's really easy to want only soft lights in an image. Like it's easy because it's like, a big broad light here and a big broad light there. But what you get sometimes is a pretty boring image. And it's important to realize, like, if this were a laundromat, like there would be a bank of windows right here, and if this were like 9 or 10 a.m., light would be coming right in those and creating some hard light and some hard shadows. So if you ignore all those things, you get something that doesn't look real. It looks lit and it looks set up, but it doesn't look real. And you can probably think of like sitcoms like Full House or something like that from the 80s and 90s, where the lighting, I'm sure you didn't notice it at the time, but if you ever go back and watch those, like the chairs are placed, and everywhere there's a chair, there's like a key light, like a hair light on the person separating from the background. It's like, where are these lights coming from? It's not real at all. And I think, in some ways for like television production and things like that, camera settings, those are important. But to some degree, I think like having those hard lights in there, they'll make it a little bit more of a technical challenge. But in my opinion, they help things look a little bit more real. And we're trying to pull something off that's not real at all. Some of those times, the lighting decisions that make it more real can really make a difference in the final image. I didn't expect to be up on a ladder today. All right. But I'm not above it. So I'm going to choose my power here to be about a half to 3/4 power. Thank you, John. All right. This is another, I think, relatively important part. I'm just going to move this over to the side, if you don't mind, of the process. I think I've met photographers, and this doesn't happen all the time, but I have met photographers who won't set up their own lighting, or they won't do certain things because they figured out somewhere along the way that they're above it. And I don't really agree with that. I think that it's cool to have help, getting people to help you set up lighting and things like that. And I do really appreciate help and having John and Julia here, but I wouldn't ask them to do anything that I wouldn't do. And setting up lighting is, I think it's part of the. What's that?
It's pointing about here.
Pointing about there. All right. It could probably come down a little bit. Let's. I don't know what this looks like, so let's just take a picture and then we'll see, because that's literally what I would be doing. So we'll take a picture, and thanks to the wonders of technology, you guys will be able to see this directly on the screen if I don't get in your way. Oh, it's gorgeous. It did almost nothing, didn't it? Oh, there it is. It did something. Perfect. So we did decide that what we wanted to do is have our guy like standing here, and there's going to be some clothes floating in the air. So we said we wanted a little bit of a hard shadow going on here. We want to make sure he is lit. So let's go ahead and test that hard shadow technique. John, if you want to go over to the shutter, I want to throw the clothes. It's fun. And capture the clothes, as they're in the air right here. We'll just do our test. That'll be a start of our test. Are we ready? All right, let's do it. All right, good job. So that'll be a good start to the test. Are we capturing these? Are they decently well exposed? And can we see the shadow? Right on. We can see the shadow. You know what? I feel like the shadow is still a little bit too soft. What do you guys feel? Like it's not as well defined as I would like it to be. Well, that's not a big problem. What we can do is take the
diffuser off, or take the whole thing off?
That's a really good suggestion. We can start off with softboxes. You do get some diffusers. Let's try taking the diffusion panels off first. Okay. And then why don't we take the diffusion panels off of a second strip box, and then I'll just replace this.
That one has a grid in it.
Okay.
Might we need the grid later?
I don't know.
That's a good question. I'll just go pull this one out.
Okay. I don't know. That's the honest answer. It's got 2 diffusion panels, so we can
Okay.
pull these off. And while you do that, thank you, John, I'll explain what diffusion panels are. So that's kind of what makes a softbox. You have like a bright light in the center of your, I'm going to get over here so the mic doesn't pick up all that noise. So you have like a bright light in the center of your softbox. Maybe we can take them both out, John? And then you have a couple of diffusion panels in there. And basically these are like sheets of fabric, like white fabric, that are going to like hit the light's going to hit this fabric and bounce back into the softbox. And then it's going to bounce back out again. So by the time it does this a couple of times, the light that's coming off is hopefully dispersed throughout the entire space of the strip box. So instead of having like a very small pin light source, you get something that is a lot larger. And larger light sources lead to softer shadows. So that's the whole goal. There we go. We can take these off. And what we're using here is, this is a PulseBuff Einstein, and these are the PulseBuff collapsible softboxes, and they're really great for travel. I fit basically all my gear into 2 Pelican cases for this event, which is very, very cool. All right, we're going to move that back off, and how is I'm creating some more production issues today, aren't I? Camera crews are like, why are you moving everything around so much? All right, no, they're not saying that. Okay, so now what we've done is we've taken the diffusion panels out of our strip box here, which was John's idea, and now what we're going to do is try this again. So it's going to be, basically we have a hard light and we have some reflective surface in there. So I'm going to throw this up and hopefully we can see what it does there. You can see my excellent posing, by the way. This is why I'm not at all the model. Okay, so we've got a couple things that I want to address here. First of all, has anyone noticed the extreme shift in exposure? Yeah, like we've got a lot less between the actual, between this strip box and the subject. There's a lot less fabric. It's not hitting all that stuff. So the light is going to get a lot brighter. Let's just do it again and let's see what's going on with the shadow here. If we get this here, I would like the shadow to be a little bit more that way. Does that make sense? In other words, the shadow that we're getting here from this close is kind of like straight on. I'd love it if it was more actually on this. Yeah, so if we brought the light this way, then it would push the shadow that way. Let's just try it one more time, and I'll just do this right about here so we can see what the shadow actually looks like. There we go. And even though we still have yet to get our exposure correct, we'll be able to tell a couple things. Yeah, that doesn't really look bad. And here's a couple things that I do want to address. So in kind of like coming up with the idea for this shot, like why would we have this shadow? Can everyone look at the image and tell me? I can tell you.
We can see if anyone online
Let's go
knows.
on the internet. Why is it kind of important to have that shadow?
Just to show that it's elevated in the air?
Yeah, totally. Let's just look at it without the shadow. Like without that, it kind of looks like that piece of clothing is like glued to that washing machine, doesn't it? Like there's no real depth there. But we put the shadow in there, and all of a sudden it looks like it's separated out from the washing machine, and you can tell that it actually is in the air. So certain things like that, when you guys are attempting to do levitation or create these effects, it's a really, I feel, important part to like think about. Okay, something's in the air. How do we like actually show that it's in the air? Well, a shadow is a really great way to show a thing's location because you can identify this with its shadow and see that, okay, it is floating in the air and it's casting that shadow here. Especially, this is kind of like a blob shape here, but when it's a person and the person is actually going to be here, it's going to become really clear because you're going to see their hand shadow, here on the washing machine and things like that. So that's what's going to really come through is like, not only is this person levitating here, but we've got their shadow.
Yeah, we have some people shouting out from the internet. Todd Allingston and Corey Aaron C. Photo both say to create depth in the image, and Inceptive Photography says to create realism.
Exactly. Realism in depth. You've got shadows and things like that. So that's why we're not starting out front lighting this. If I were to front light this with some like very large, broad light sources, maybe like a couple parabolic reflectors here, those shadows would get very, very soft and we probably wouldn't even see them. Now, just looking at this, from like just what we've started off now, I do see another thing that I want to do to kind of help separate out this piece of clothing from the washing machines behind it, because we're looking for depth here, and that is maybe I can give this a side light. So if we gave this bit of clothes a side light here, then it would show the side light that would kind of like basically separate it out from the background. So even though we're so early, we haven't even started bringing in our subjects, we know now that, like, okay, we've got our shadows, maybe I want to pull this light this way, we've got a side light in here that it's going to help separate our subjects out from their background as well. So all these cool different things that we can do, even from this early on stage, are just going to really help make this image a little bit more realistic and give us those, those really cool key elements. So a lot of this is like using the lighting to kind of sculpt this out. So
Before we do that, is
yes.
this in position now, or do you think we want to slide
We're going to move
it?
it over just a little bit,
Wanna
and
do that
John, we
first?
can go ahead and do
Yeah.
that now if you want to. We're going to move it over just a little bit. Now, if you really did want to make this like uber realistic, I would probably start gelling these lights. Maybe put a little bit of a green light on these to look like they're tungsten lights, because that's what tungsten, like an overhead light, would be. We don't have to do that because it would probably take a while, and every time you start using gels, things just take a lot longer to work with your color. But
Go around me if you, for the camera so I can see you.
Yeah?
Am I blocking you?
no, you're cool. You're cool. But we
Aaron,
are going to...
Marty K says that shadow tip just made my day. I've been missing that element for my flying objects. So
That is awesome. Marty, I'm glad you made the comment. Thank you for saying that, Marty. Yeah, totally. Like, if something's got a shadow, it really does help to put it in place. Think of like Peter Pan when he's flying. Like, he was always trying to nail his shadow down, because that kept him in place. That's our second Peter Pan reference of the day. Nice. So another thing that we are looking at, we've got our light back here. So as John gets this in place, we're going to start continuing. He tries to get it in place. Yeah, I apologize, John.
Let's see.
We could take the strip box off momentarily and then move the light.
Let's.
Whatever's easiest for you. And you've got time. There's really no hurry.
Okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
work on it while you're talking.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so we've got that, and we know we're going to wind up bringing our power down a little bit, right? Because it's overexposed. But we have a couple of options here. Let's say this is up there, and we really don't want to move it around. It's overexposed. Does anyone know what I can do with my camera settings to make sure that this does not come out overexposed? Looks like Todd is on point. Let's see it.
Yeah, you could increase your f-stop would be the first thing I would do.
Exactly, increase the f-stop. So if those of you guys who are watching at home or here in the audience are not used to using strobes, there's a couple of things that you can do with natural light that would help make things a little bit darker. You could increase your shutter speed. So we're shooting at 1/160th of a second right now. Let's say I increase that to 1/400 of a second. Well, that would wind up letting less light in the camera. However, when you're using strobes, you have something called sync speed that you have to watch out for. And with this particular camera, I don't feel comfortable going, it's rated to 1/200th of a second, but sometimes the shutters don't complete their actions before the flashes of the light happen. So what you get then is black bars. Have you ever you've seen that, right? When you've tried to take a picture and the black bar is like in your frame, that's actually taking a picture of your shutter, like trying to close there. So my shutter speed, I can't go any faster than 1/160th, and that is because I'm using these strobes and the sync speed is just not fast enough. So what we can do, instead of changing that to make a little less light, we can still change two things, and Todd was totally right. We can change our aperture. So if I wanted to change this from 5.6 to maybe f8, which is one stop, it's going to let half as much light actually enter my camera from this light here. The other thing I could do is, well, three things. There's so many options with photography. The other thing I could do is, on a 5D Mark II, you can lower your ISO down from 100. You can go down to 50. It's ISO low, and that's going to change that as well. So that's going to let half as much light in as well. So if I went from 5.6 to f8, that would be the exact same thing as if I went from ISO 100 down to ISO 50. And the other thing I could do, anyone's got it? Someone's got it. What's that? Adjust the light. I could adjust the light, but if I didn't want to adjust the light, what's the last thing that I could do?
From camera.
Yes. Think accessories here.
Neutral density filter.
Neutral density filter.
There we go, neutral density filter. So what a neutral density filter is, you put it on the front of your camera lens, and that allows less light in your camera. So we've gone over 4 different methods on how to let less light into your camera. A neutral density filter, you can buy them in 1 stop, 2 stop, 3 stops. You screw them on the front of your camera, and all of a sudden you have less light coming into your camera. So all those things you could do with your camera and not touch this light at all. Or if you did want to touch the light, you could do that too. So in this case, I think we're going to wind up bringing our power down. I apologize, John, because you already put that down. I think we are going to wind up pulling down the power a little bit. And here's the reason why. In this case, I want to keep my power on my strobes from being very high. I don't want the power to be very high. And the reason is because we're going to be taking a lot of frames, and I want to snap these off over and over and over again. And I don't want my recycle times to be higher. So if you guys are using something like a ProPhoto 8A Air or something like that, which shoots 13 frames a second at full power, you don't have to worry about recycle times. But basically anything other than, a $20,000 strobe, you've got recycle times that you want to worry about. So if I can, shoot with my 5D Mark II, which I think does anyone know the frame rate? So it's like 4.5 frames per second. It's pretty slow, 4.5 frames per second. So if I wanted to hold down my shutter speed and every frame, so 4.5 frames per second, and have these lights fire over and over again, I would want to make sure to use low power. And for a lot of types of compositing, a lot of types of photography, you want to make sure you can have that option to be able to bring your power to be able to shoot over and over and over again and have that recycle time come in. So that's
Aaron, got
yes.
a quick question about that particular image. Vern Family is wondering, why is the light creating a double shadow from that piece of clothing? So there's kind of the main shadow, and then there's another lighter outline around it.
Double shadow. Reminds me of double rainbow. Oh my God.
All the way.
What does it mean? That's a really good question. What we're getting here is, because we've taken basically the modifiers off of this softbox. So what we're getting is a direct light from the actual bulb itself, what's like the bare bulb. So that's one of our shadows. The second shadow that we're getting is the light that's kind of bouncing around inside of the strip box and then coming out. So it's a little bit it's kind of like a quote unquote messy shadow, isn't it? If we wanted to clean it up even more, I would just take the strip box completely off. Then we'd be shooting what's called bare bulb, and then we get very hard shadows. Just because this is an environment where I don't think we would just be seeing a light bulb hanging. That's what bare bulb simulates, is just a light bulb hanging out. I don't think the shadows would be that harsh in this, especially once we start filling this area up with a little bit more ambient light. You can see our ambient is still very dark. I mean, this image doesn't look, unless you guys think it looks good, but I don't think it looks good yet. So we don't have what we want just yet. But we do have a couple elements that I do like. Let's say our subjects are right here in the foreground. There we go. We got it again? Should I throw something?
I just want to see if we got the right buttons up there to bring the power down.
Oh, cool. Hopefully we brought it up, and then we have to bring the ladder back in. Yeah, there I am acting like an angel.
Can you levitate?
What was that?
Can you levitate there?
Yeah, I'll do it. Why not? I'll just jump right here in place. Can you catch me in the air?
Yeah.
There we go. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. It's pretty impressive, I know. I'm not the model for today, but it'll come through. I'm so excited to be levitating. All right, thank you for telling me to do that, John. This brings up two really great points. There's so many cool things to think about when doing this type of photography. Can everyone see the fall off between my head and my feet? How much brighter my head is than my feet. There's a huge difference in lighting. My head is overexposed and my feet are underexposed. So if our subject really was jumping in place here, we would need to completely change our lighting. The light that we're using right now just would not work because we're getting such a difference between the top of his body to the bottom of his body. Luckily for us, he's not actually going to be standing straight up. He's going to be off to the side more, levitating something like this, so the light fall off from his body should be relatively even. But if we did have a concept where we wanted to do that, we would have to do something like bring our light and put it way up higher. So it would degrade. This is the inverse square law. We're just talking about math, aren't we again? But if the light were higher, the light that fell on him would wind up being more even because it is, that's how light travels. Do you guys want me to explain the inverse square law? You get it, right? Everyone's like, no math, please. Okay, so that's cool. But the other thing that I really do like about this image is we are getting some really nice separation between the foreground and the background, and that's that kind of depth that we're talking about. You can see that here where our subjects are, they're going to be decently well lit, and here in our background, which is really only a few feet away, is pretty dark. So if you do want to create that depth in your image, this is a good way to do it. Use a lighting modifier that's really only going to light part of your image. So we do have a couple subjects that are going to be right around here, and they're going to go back into fall off. They're going to go a little bit farther into darkness. All right, the next thing I want to focus on is maybe can we take one more photo so we can actually see the light that we're going to do.
Are you going to throw anything?
No.
Ready?
I mean, I kind of want to, but no, we don't need to. All right. Thank you. So the next thing I want to focus on, we are probably going to bring that rim light in as well. But I do want to talk about our next light here. And this is like the little pan light that we've got there in the background. And I want to bring that in, and I want to make it relatively interesting because I think that can actually wind up lighting our scene. Is it too low? Do you guys think it's a little too low? I think it might be a little bit too low. So we're going to just probably raise that up a little bit. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to fire a strobe into it. And yesterday, if you guys remember, we talked about how light works. John, I think somewhere over there is a CTO gel. If you want to grab that right back there near the power cords, we're gonna gel this light. I'll explain that in a second. But yesterday we talked about lighting being basically a lot like splashing water, right? Like if you splash water in one direction, it's gonna like continue to splash all around. So if we want to make this light look like it's on, like there's no light bulb in there, we already saw that earlier. What you could do, well, we could just saw the top off of this and then like try to put a light down in there. That would totally work. But if we don't have that option, which in this case I don't think we do because I didn't ask permission to saw the top of that light off, what you can also do is shine a light into that light, and then that light will shine right back down. So that's what we're going to try to do. We've got a light here, and this is set up. We've got basically an Einstein with a grid on it. 20 degree, perfect, thank you. We've got a light with a 20-degree grid on it, and that's going to shine light directly up into this light here, and then it's going to come back down and basically make it look like the light is coming from this light instead of coming from the ground. We do want to raise this a little bit, I think. Maybe we should do that first.
Yeah, I'll get the ladder in again.
Perfect. This is part of the fun of actually doing things while we're explaining them too, is instead of doing this all offset or last night or something like that, we decided to do it today during the set because you can actually see the entire process of like how we're thinking. Yeah, Miguel has a question.
I was going to ask you, if you were doing this, let's say we were in a real laundromat, would you consider possibly using speed lights to kind of not have all this gear everywhere? You may be limited on space. Could you even do it with a speed light on location?
Could you do it with speed lights? That's a really good question. So speed lights they're super popular, thanks to like the Strobist community and things like that. And I got my start using speed lights. Basically, I used them for everything for about a year or two. I don't really use them anymore. And I have a couple of reasons why I don't use them. First of all is like for reliability, anything that needs to run on batteries, in my opinion, is just a little bit less reliable than something you can plug in. Power and things like that. If I'm doing a personal shot and maybe you have to like stick a light that's very small in a certain place, a speed light is still a really great option for that. If I'm doing a client shoot and someone's paying me money and like I've got something that's like dying in the corner and losing power or something like that, or not firing properly, that's gonna then in turn look bad on me. Like, you don't want like a piece of equipment to be the limiting factor on how good your photo shoot can be. And speed lights have gotten very, very good. When I first started, they were not as good as they are now, but I still don't really use them. It happened like a couple of times where the speed light was kind of like the thing that made the shoot not great. Like they started losing power, or I was like shooting at one-to-one power because I needed a lot of power, and then my recycle time was like every 6 seconds, and then in 20 minutes my batteries died, and like I started losing power on there, and the sun was setting and all this stuff, and the last thing I needed to keep on my mind was like, let's replace the batteries in my little speed light. So a couple times of that happening, and I was like, nope, I'm done. No more speed lights. But for like little options, sometimes if I need to put like a light in a refrigerator or something like that, a speed light is a great option for that. Or just like a little rim some places. Or in this case, if we did have a reason for putting a light inside of these washing machines, I might think of using a speed light there too, because you wouldn't have to like run a power cord in there as well. So for those options, I think a speed light is great. For this type of stuff, I would still impose on the building. I would set up all kinds of lights and rigs and light stands and things like that.
Yeah, look at the height of this.
Yeah, let's see what, Miguel, you want to take a picture and see how our height's looking? Beautiful. I'm going to try to not touch that camera a single time today and still call myself a photographer. People will be like, Aaron, what's this workshop called? Getting other people to take your photos for you, 101?
Yeah, Aaron, I think it's good to note.
I know the Alien B 800s you're using are, what, $325 maybe on the open market right now?
In price,
$325,
yeah.
And the high-end Canon flash is over $600.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it used to be an issue that strobes were very expensive, but I don't think that's true anymore.
That's a really great point. You know, if all you want to shoot with is Profoto and Elinchrom and Broncolor, then there's a huge price difference. But, you know, with an Alien B being totally acceptable for a lot of applications and less expensive than like a Canon 580 EX2, then yeah, it's, you know, it's really a give and take. There are positives to speed lights when you need to stick a small light in a certain location and you can't have a power cord running to them. But for reliability, we're shooting all day today, you know, and John's already been on this ladder enough times. I wouldn't want him to replace batteries. Like, you know, all right, here comes an hour and a half. John, replace all the batteries and all the speed lights for me, please. He'd be like, oh, I hate you. Just use strobes like a normal person. So that's a really good point. All right, I think that looks pretty good on height. So we're gonna give this a little test here and see what we've got. All right. Is this cool for you guys to experience, like seeing the whole shoot come together, like as it would actually come together? Very cool. I was hoping that it would be, but there's no way of knowing. There are a couple things to keep in mind what we're about to do here. We're using a grid on the front of our 7-inch reflector. The grid is made out of plastic. If you use a modeling light, the grid will melt. Gels are also made of plastic. If you use a modeling light, the gels will melt. However, modeling lights are really great to be able to see where your light's going, especially when you are using a grid, because you want to see where the lights are. So can we go ahead and turn our modeling light on to full power? Trick here is to not leave it on a long time. You want to just be able to see where it's going, and modeling lights are basically there to show you what's going on with your actual strobe, like where is the light going to be hitting, and then we'll be able to see. There we go. So we can actually see in here. Now, normally in this application, what I would do is, if we could, turn out lights. Now, I don't think the camera crew is going to be too happy if we turned out lights, but if I was in like our studio or something like that, and I couldn't actually see the light, like is it in fact hitting inside of our, there we go. We can see it like very faintly here. And I think we've got it in the right place. But if it were too bright in the ambient, what I would do is I would turn off all the lights, you know, in the house just for like a second or two, and then position my light correctly, and then turn the lights back on. So we can turn the modeling light back off then, and we'll see if this works. But there are no guarantees. That's what today is all about. There's no guarantees. That's why the models aren't even here yet. So we're not wasting their time. Yesterday we talked about wasting clients' time doing this stuff. Obviously, if you were doing this sort of thing, you wouldn't want your client on set yet. They'd be, you know, hanging out in their trailer. You know, come a few hours early, get all this sort of thing set up, and then tell your clients to come at, you know, 10, 11, 12 p.m. Or if you're not shooting with clients, just tell your models to come a little bit later. Unless your models are really interested in learning lighting, there's really no reason for them to be here at this time. And you can always use stand-ins, especially if we did have, is that ready to go?
I think so.
Perfect.
See if it slaves from the...
Okay, perfect. Miguel, would you mind?
Just so you know, Aaron,
yes.
Mariah says, it is absolutely helpful watching this production as it is in process. I'm a college student and I'm trying to always assist in shoots so I can get this experience in watching and participating from start to finish in a production. So people
Awesome.
are definitely enjoying being able to see it.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, that's really cool. And this sort of experience is like, I'm hoping it's like people are here on the actual set. And we can see that actually did work. Is there any way to pull up like the before and after with this real quick? I think, is Mike in the back room? Yeah, thanks, Mike. So we can see the light on there. There we go. So light off and light on. But it's still not really doing much, right? It's not like, it's illuminating in here, but it's not illuminating everything else. So let's pop up the power and see what we can do. Pump up the power. Now that's the really cool thing about these strobes is they can get very, very powerful and put out a heck of a lot of light. All right, how hard?
Full power now.
Full power. All right, let's see what we can do. You can even hear it. You can hear the power. That was amazing. That's really, really cool. Okay, so we have used a gel. Now, when you do have something close to full power, you do lose a couple of things. You lose things like your color. So that's something that we have to battle with. If you do want a lot of light coming with it, the higher the intensity of the light, the lower the saturation of the light. So if we wanted more of that yellow color, we would have to pull down the intensity of the light. However, we can see that it is in fact lighting. Can we pull up this final image with one before we even started before we started to put the light up there? There we go. Very cool. So we can see a couple things. Not only is the light, actually like lighting our fixture here in this image, but it's actually lighting some more of what's on the floor there and everything like that. So if we wanted to pull this like even farther back, it might be hard in this case, but let's say that was like hanging from a light stand. We could actually move this entire rig backwards in this direction, and what it would wind up doing is lighting some more of what's going on behind there. The other really cool thing that we can do is you can trick the camera and trick the mind a little bit. Let's say we wanted this light to look like it was lighting, like this tree and things like that. Well, it doesn't actually have to light those things. What we could do is we could set up another softbox or a bare bulb or something like that right up here with a warming gel on it, and that would create a light basically right around here that would make it look like this light is lighting everything else around there, but instead there would be another light. Do you want to try it?
Just a bare bulb right about here?
Yeah, put a bare bulb like right pretty much behind this guy here.
Yeah.
And we'll see what it'll look like.
So, Aaron, Jorge A is wondering, because you're already starting to set up light stands and everything, are you going to shoot a shot without all the light stands and stuff so you can composite them out?
Most definitely. Yeah, exactly. And that's a really great question, because that's the entire essence of what frame compositing is. Everything that I put in here. Now, this light stand is a little bit farther out into set than I would probably do myself. If we had a boom or something like that and it could come from behind the wall, that would be great. Maybe we can do that during the break. We could just reset this up. But if not, it's not a big deal, because we have the shot with the light stand there, but we also have the shot without the light stand there. So in frame compositing, if I'm standing here in one picture and then we take another picture and I'm standing here, we can remove me from the place that I was standing there because we have all that information. So that's the whole idea behind frame compositing.
The issue I have, for instance, if I was in this situation, I would shoot it and I would say, well, let's remove the light stand and get a blank shot. The problem is that I come across is now that shot is much darker.
The shot is darker, right?
Yeah.
Because you've moved the light.
Certainly. So to me, I have a hard time then recompositing that in.
Okay, that's a really good point. Now, sometimes that's totally going to happen. If you're moving an object like a piece of clothing, you're never going to have that problem because the clothing is not what's lighting your scene. But if you're moving something like a light, you are going to sometimes run across the issue where moving that light then changes out part of your scene. You can do a couple of really cool things there depending on what kind of grip you have. Let's say you have a standard light stand that's coming from the floor up to support your light. Well, if you decided you were going to remove that, instead of removing your light completely, what you would do is stand over here, hold your light in a similar place, and then you would still have this entire area without the light stand, and you would still have the light lighting this area. So you would use, and we can probably try that today because we're going to run into some of those same issues today. So instead of worrying about let's remove the light completely, just try moving it a little bit, change the lighting modifier so you still have that blank area, and you can hold it or use a boom or however sophisticated you want to get with it, really. A really great way to do it is if you are using some type of boom or this camera jib right here, which is really nice. Maybe we could actually focus in on this. Could you just move that jib up and down just a little bit, if you don't mind? So as we move that up, pretend there was a light on there right now, and then move it down a little bit, and now there's a light right there. So if you were to move that up and down, even just a foot, you'd then be able to composite the differences between those two. And for those of you guys either here in the audience or at home who are I don't really know that compositing process, that's what we're going to be doing, a little bit of rough compositing today, and then tomorrow we're going to be bringing it all together. So hopefully all this will wind up making a lot more sense starting later today. Join us later today for compositing, actually playing around with the computer. I love it that we're compositing 101, by the way, and we haven't touched a computer yet today. Isn't that awesome?
It really is. I mean, to me, it's like I said yesterday, it's something that I learned, and I'm really excited to actually put into play, is to focus much more on the pre-pro than I do on the post.
Yeah, and it's so fun. I mean, just compositing just in the computer, that is totally fun. But being able to build all this sort of things, like build an entire set, build an entire concept up, build an entire image up, with the idea that it's going to become a composite, and building our lighting in that way, I think it's just it's a really cool lesson, and this is a whole lot of fun. So something I wouldn't want to miss out if I was kind of learning the entire process. All right, how are we looking? All right, cool. Let's try this. It would be, do we have another control arm or a boom or anything like that?
Yeah, we can get one.
Okay, no worries. Well, let's see what that looks like there. That's probably not going to look a lot like it's imitating the light. What was that? Oh, we didn't take a shot. How did that light fire? Oh, I'm like, let's see what that looks like, gang. All right, well, why don't we take a shot? We'll see how it looks. Okay, because the light is basically firing from the right. It's right behind this wall here, just in case anyone can't see it. There we go. It's looking like it's coming from back there, which I'm not totally opposed to. It's kind of interesting. It gives like a little bit of light and character back here. It doesn't make it look like this is the light that's lighting that sort of stuff, but this is what it's all about. It's kind of building it up. So what do you guys think? I don't think that looks bad with that shadow and everything like that. Do you like it? What was that?
The papers on the board look kind of overexposed. I don't know if that's something that would...
Oh yeah, totally overexposed.
Yeah.
You're definitely right about that.
Is that going to be replaced or?
Having them overexposed?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll just lower the power.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're good then.
Yes. We will replace it with a properly exposed image. Try that again. Let's try it again. Thank you. Yeah, so in kind of coming up with your lighting design and figuring out, do you like the placement of these lights and things like that? Part of it is like, do you like what's going on in the shot itself? Let's pump the power up just a tiny bit, if you wouldn't mind, John. Maybe 0.2 of a stop. So part of it is going to be, do you like the light that's actually hitting your scene? And the other part's going to be, is it properly exposed? All right, cool. Let's check that out.
And with the very overexposed shot, Creepin' Owl, who was very active yesterday, so welcome back, says the shadows are a dead giveaway of direction.
Of direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's totally right. The direction in this does not at all look like it's coming from that light. So originally we talked about making it look like that this light would be lighting these. In this case, that wouldn't be what we were trying to pull off. If we were trying to pull off that, we would definitely want our light basically right behind this, with like a little bit of a globe or maybe some diffusion material right around it so the shadows are not as hard. In this case, you're right. We would not be going for the idea that this is the light lighting those. It would just be a completely different lighting setup, saying that there is an unknown light source. Maybe it's just a lamp or something right off camera that is in fact lighting these things. So at this point, it wouldn't be trying to fool the eye into thinking this was the light lighting these. It would be there's another light right off camera.
Newman733 says it could be that it looks like it's the front door of the laundromat and it's sunny outside, letting in a stream of light there for you.
I pretty much love that
Isn't that
description.
yeah.
John, you just created the front door of the laundromat.
Now, do you want any scrim here? I can't see the shot. Is this still too bright?
Good point. So what John is asking me is the light that's hitting here, it's basically right behind this wall, and it's bare bulb. And for those of you guys, Julie, would you mind bringing me a light that's bare bulb so I can kind of explain what that is? For those, I'm guessing some people don't know what bare bulb is, but in case everyone does. There we go. It doesn't have to be on or anything like that. Okay. So bare bulb basically just means, and this is a Alien Bee, but we're using an Einstein back there. They're very similar. Bare bulb means exactly that. There's nothing surrounding the bulb. So let's just turn that around. There we go. So this is bare bulb, and what this means is like there are no lighting modifiers on this. And a lot of people, when using strobes, they think I have to put a lighting I gotta put a softbox on something. I gotta put a 7-inch reflector. I gotta use grids. I gotta use umbrellas. I gotta use all this stuff. But Barebolt provides you with a really interesting light. It's a light that basically looks like a light bulb, and it's going to give you those really hard shadows. It's going to give you a completely different effect. And in my opinion, it actually more closely resembles light that you would actually see in an environment. So in doing environmental portraits and things like that, this light, instead of just coming out in a beam this way or being in a softbox, it's going to kind of go everywhere. So a lot of the times it creates a light that's, I feel, a little bit more realistic to what you actually see, like a light bulb hanging or something like this. You know, it's not like directed entirely. It does have, you know, this is basically the same thing as like a beauty dish or whatever. It just needs like a little bit of a disc right here, and that's basically a beauty dish, right? Kind of cool. Little, yeah, light is light, whether it's continuous or a lamp or a beauty dish, it's all basically the same. So this would basically imitate, you know, like a lamp, something like the cover was off or something like that. So basically here we're deciding, is this interesting?
So Jorge A is wondering whether that background should be much darker so that the people in front are our focus and not the background.
That's a really good question. And we did talk about that earlier as well. And that's totally like an artistic and stylistic decision that we can make. Everything okay back there? Yep. Okay, cool. That's an artistic decision that we can make. If we start taking pictures, also keep in mind that there are going to wind up being people here in the background that I don't necessarily want completely in the dark. You don't tend to see laundromats that do just have a light right here. Like that kind of wouldn't make sense. But if we are taking pictures and we're like, the subjects really aren't standing out as much as they should, then that's a really great time during the shot. And we'll probably get to that in segments 2 and 3 when our subjects are in here, when we're able to decide, okay, yeah, it's a little bit too bright back there. Let's knock that down. That's a great suggestion. All right, so it looks like we've got a flag going on here. And let's take another shot. Basically, John set up a flag which is going to keep the light from hitting this wall so much. And so it should darken down just this area on the wall, but still produce light coming towards the beautiful ficus plant we've got going on. There we go. So we can see our exposure is a little bit more normal. Maybe could we pull those two up side by side? There we go. Well, it's kind of hard to tell, isn't it? Maybe when they're a little bit bigger, but maybe if we, yeah, let's pull it in maybe a little bit. There we go. Can it get a little bit closer to the light? I feel horrible that you guys can't even see what's going on back here, but I'll describe it to you in riveting detail. All right, we can pull this back out of the shot there. Thank you, Julia. All right, so a flag, basically what we're using here is a piece of diffusion material or like a black card or whatever it is. In this case, it's just a piece of white foam core that's right next to your light. So if a light is going to be shining out in this direction, if it's hitting the wall and creating a hot spot there, it's just something that blocks the light from hitting that wall, so the light is coming out in this direction instead of just hitting the wall. We good to go? Cool, let's try it again. All right, and there we go. So we can kind of see the camera's perspective. I didn't realize I'd be there. But now we can see the shadow here that's kind of coming out from the background. That is actually from the flag. So if we wanted to bring those back a little bit, oh, cool, thank you for doing that. The shadow there is actually from the flag. You can see it's not hitting the wall so much, but we are getting kind of like an interesting shadow there. And that's just something, if you guys decide you're like, yeah, that shadow looks kind of cool, leave it in there. If you don't want it in there, don't put it in there. Something, you know, like perfect lighting wouldn't have a big shadow there, but, you know, something that's supposed to look like it's actually real and lit in, you know, an environment like this, it just may have a shadow like that. So totally up to you and your decision on doing this.
There's a sign on the door.
There's a sign on the door which is casting the shadow. Maybe we could pull it back a little bit. Yeah. That would actually be really cool. If you could use something like a Duratrans, which is, if you guys have ever seen like the side of a bus shelter or something like that, where you'll see like an advertisement and it's lit from behind. That's what a Duratrans is. And you could use a Duratrans here as a flag, which would make it look like there's actually like a projected image back onto the wall right over there. So instead of just being a dark shadow, it would look almost like there's a projected image. And that actually would look like there was a sign on the door that you were shining light through. So all pretty cool. We don't have a Duratrans laying around, do we? Probably not. I did not list that in my... Make sure there's a Duratrans. It looks like an exit sign on the door. All right, let's try popping that off one more time. I'm going to get way back over here, and we'll see what that looks like. All right, perfect. And I think we're looking great there. We're not overexposing that certain area, and we are in fact lighting this area. And I think, these hard shadows, we see there's a shadow on me here, as well as these shadows here on like the gumball machine and the plant and everything like that. They really do give the image a little bit more character, in my opinion. So mixing hard shadows with soft shadows and, a generally good amount of fill light, I think is a great way to kind of like draw a little bit more, just draw a little bit more interest out of your photo. So I'm going to ask you guys, what's missing still in our shot? We've got 3 lights set up. What's missing? What still looks a little bit off to you guys? How could we improve?
Maybe a little ambient or fill, environmental fill.
I love it. Yeah, some environmental fill light. We're seeing still like some dark shadows here on the floor and things like that. This is like fading pretty quickly from highlight into shadow. So we really don't have a whole lot of fill light or ambient light, especially if we were to have our subject. I mean, look at those hard shadows. Like if this were a laundromat that had windows and things like that, you wouldn't see such hard shadows on people. Like you can see me in a room right now. I don't have like super hard shadows on me. That's just because, like most buildings have windows, and it's going to let light in, it's going to bounce all around and fill in those shadows. So we do want to do a couple things that are going to allow us to have quite a bit of fill light in here. So there are a couple things we can do here. We could choose to use like giant parabolic reflectors here, or we can use kind of the room that we're currently in to see if that's going to actually fill our light. And I think let's go for that. What do you think, John? So we're going to use, behind our beautiful studio audience here, we've got a giant white wall. And that's like a pretty perfect reflector. So if we take that light right there, that Einstein that's got the long throw reflector in it, and we just put it behind our audience and fire it that way at a very high power, what it's going to do, the light is going to hit that wall, it's going to make it quite a bit brighter, and the light is all going to come back in this way. And what it's going to do is it's going to produce a very large fill light. It's going to be a fill light that basically looks like the entire side of the wall. So maybe there is like a window bank or something like over there. So it's just another cool example, I think, of using what is like a pretty small, if you guys can see the reflector that's on there, it's an 11-inch long throw reflector, and it's not a particularly large reflector. You wouldn't think that would create a fill for an image like of this size. But if we point it against the back wall, then that's going to bounce all the light back this way, and that's going to produce some really great fill. All right, let's get that going on. We'll turn the power up just a little bit, and then we're going to be done with our segment. It's going to be so cool.
A couple other suggestions while we're getting that set up. Let's see, Michael Porterfield was suggesting a strip box from the right, feathered in front of the machines to give a little bit of fill to them.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Perhaps
you mean the
that
one that's already hanging
right
out there? Yeah, great suggestion, Michael. And we also talked about, remember when I was throwing that piece of clothes there, how we might actually wind up bringing something in here to give a little bit of a rim to those clothes. And that's basically going to serve the exact same point. So, Michael, you're right on the right path. That's exactly what I was thinking too. All right, Julie, let's go ahead and crank the power way up on that. Just that big up arrow sign, and we can see that'll hopefully come through. Not on yet. That's not on yet. Perfect. All right. This will hopefully give you guys another great piece of like how I do my lighting. Everyone's different, but I like to start with one light, and then I'll add another light, and then I'll add another light, and then I'll add another light. And then once I get a light, especially if I'm getting up to like 4 or 5 lights in a scene, I love using lighting. It's not something that you need to do to be a good photographer by any means. You can light however you like. But once you get 4 or 5 lights in a scene and you think something looks good, one thing I always do, which sounds totally counterintuitive, is I always turn them off individually. I'll get the shot like looking how I want it, and then I'll go through and turn off one by one each one of my lights, because a lot of the time you tend to overlight things, and sometimes it looks more interesting with just one of those lights back off again. So I tend to like build my lighting up, and then I turn those lights off each one by one, and I'm like, you know what? That shot actually kind of looks better without that light back there. So we'll just do it without that light.
Yeah,
All right.
Don Fonstick actually asked, why not just open the shades and let the sunshine in?
I hate sunshine. Can't you tell from my complexion? No, that's a really good question. We are shooting at a shutter speed here that is, we're shooting at 1/160 of a second at 5.6 at 100. And remember, we do have to freeze that motion. So unless it's like very, very bright outside, we're not going to see, remember what we started off earlier with the amount of light that was in the room, it was almost no light in here. Not only that, but what we're relying on to freeze our motion in this case is that very fast burst from our strobes. We're using a shutter speed that's not so fast that it's not going to freeze motion on its own. So if we do have light coming in from the ambient, that light is going to be present during the entire duration of our shutter, which is going to create some motion blur in the final shot. So if we don't want that motion blur, either we need to use just ambient light and really crank up our shutter speed, or we need to pretty much kill our ambient light and just use our strobes, which have a very short flash duration. So all part of like trying to figure out, do we need things to be frozen? And if they do, we probably can't use that ambient light.
That makes it so simple, how you just explained.
Really?
Freezing objects, yes.
Awesome.
Good job.
Cool. Miguel, if you want to go ahead. Did that flash in the back? Yes. It did. Everyone's like, oh, yes. Turn it off. And we'll see if that fills our light. Fills our scene. And it should. And it did. Good. We have enough power coming from that light. And we can see that's pretty impressive. That light is, 15 feet away, firing into a back wall, and it's filling our entire set. It's way too bright, isn't it? Cool. Let's go ahead and turn the power down. Not only that, but we're starting to see some interesting shadows. This is of, I don't know what that is, maybe a camera or something back there. Some glare and reflection off of the glass. Does anyone have any ideas on how we could reduce that glare from that glass? It's a hard question.
Well, initially with reflections, you would change the angle of the light. But since we're lighting up the whole back wall, can you move the washing machines off kilter a little bit?
That's a good point. Okay.
Or open the doors a hair?
Oh, there we go. You know what? I really dig that idea. I like it a lot because that's not something I would have thought of myself.
We could move the back wall.
We could move the back wall, which would totally do it. Let's open up the doors a little bit and see if that kind of solves that problem. I wouldn't have thought of myself. That's just going to keep going. Yeah, let's pop it off again and see what we got. Did we lower the power just a little bit as well? Okay, cool. We did lower the power of that light as well. All right, so open doors, what this is going to mean is hopefully that they're not going to see the flare. Yeah, there we go. So those open doors, you can see this door here on the very right that is open. We can see through the glass there, and the flare is basically completely gone, which is exactly what we wanted to do. So we could open those doors. Another thing we could do if that didn't work is instead of firing into the back wall, we could fire it into one of these side walls. We could fire it into a side wall, the light would bounce here and then come back and fill our scene as well. So it's all like angle of incidence equals angle of reflectance. And if the camera's here and the light's there, it's gonna fire back and forth there and create some flare. So another really good point.
There's also a suggestion to use a polarizing filter on the lens.
Exactly. You could definitely use a polarizing filter on the lens. But that makes it a little bit tricky, and I'll explain why. Has anyone used a polarizing filter? Okay, you can use them outdoors with like the sun, which is going to produce the amount of glare that's in the sky. If you go 90 degrees from the sunlight, it's going to make a darker sky. Math. Polarizing filters are all about math. Now, here's the great part about a polarizing filter. What you can do is you can put a polarizing filter on your lens, which is basically going to capture light coming in one direction. Now, if you have a light source, you have to put a polarizing filter on that light source too. So the light source can send those light rays basically going off in this direction, so you won't see them on the final. You'll still see the light that illuminates your object, but you won't see a glare. Now, the difficult part is a polarizing filter will change the direction of your light rays. It'll change the orientation of your light rays once. But once that light hits an object, it's almost like it's a reset switch. So if we have a light and it's hitting the back wall and then coming back forward, that back wall is a reset switch for that light. So in this case, if we were to light it just like that, it wouldn't work. Does that make sense at all? Okay, cool. So it would polarize the light until it hit the back wall, and then once it hits the back wall, the light would come back out in every direction again, and then by the time it hit here, it would not be polarized, and even though we had one polarizing filter on our lens, it wouldn't work. Unless we have a polarizing gel expert in the chat rooms.
There's actually some really creative suggestions in the chat room right now. One is from Corby, says spray it with hairspray. Spray the doors with hairspray to give it a matte look. And also Jean says try spraying the doors with something like Pam.
Like Pam or hairspray. Wow,
Yeah.
okay, cool. So that would create a little bit more of like a foggy appearance.
Like a matte look to it.
Yeah, totally, I like that.
For those of us who don't want to do math.
Yeah, or smash the glass out with a hammer.
And
Can we get a hammer, Julia? Maybe?
Visual Wizard suggests just polarize the wall.
Just polarize the entire wall.
Makes sense.
Duh.
Completely.
To make skin look really bad. We're going to have people in the shot, so it would kill any reflections on the skin and make the skin totally flat. So
There we go.
Anyways,
John brings up
skin
another good
polarizers
point.
on people.
You can see it on my skin probably right now, the area that is actually in my skin. And then if you see any white highlights on my face, that's what's actually being that's the reflected light. I don't have pure white anywhere on my face. It's the reflected light, like what you would see if someone was wearing glasses. And that's what gives skin that little bit of vivid, it gives it its life. So without that, people tend to look flat and almost weird. So you're totally right, John, about that as well. So a couple different options, and that's awesome that here as a team we've thought of so many different options on how to bring that together. So we can either open the doors. If we don't want those doors open, let's say we do one of these doors closed. Let's try instead, John, of pushing that towards the back wall. I know how to close these pretty well. Let's just try pumping it on the side there and seeing how that looks. And I can't guarantee that this is going to look right because it's it's light. It's kind of hard to calculate in your head. All right, let's do it again. See what it looks like. Something tells me, though, that hopefully this will solve the problem. So instead of shining on the back wall, there we go. It's shining on the side of the wall, which is still bouncing around the room. It's still giving us that fill that we want to get. And we are seeing, I think these are the camera operators in reflection. Can you guys see can you see your reflections in the glass itself? Okay, so
From here, I can see a student wearing red.
Oh, okay, cool. That's an interesting point as well. So the direction that the camera is actually looking at the glass will determine what reflection it sees. So you can either remove whatever the object is, or you can change the direction of your camera angle as well.
Or you can put a black cloth over all the students.
Yeah, just cover the students with a black cloth. So all these things are really, really cool suggestions and cool ways to work with these images. If you're not shooting glass or mirrors mirrors are just a pain because they really do reflect everything. But if you're not shooting that sort of stuff, you really don't have to worry about this sort of thing. So cool. We're almost wrapped up for section 1. Maybe we'll take a couple questions here at the end, and then.
Fantastic. Let's see. We have so many questions coming. Do you have any that you want to jump in with?
Sure. Because we're covering so many different lighting scenarios right here, Josh from the UK is wondering, what advice would you give to someone that hasn't got a collection of lights and is limited to the amount of a kit that a photographer has? What's a good starting point?
That's a really good question. Now, in this environment, let's say if this were a natural light workshop in which I decided I was only going to be using natural light or light that was available for me in this very scene, what I would do is I'd probably make a couple of compromises with my camera settings that would then kind of solve that. First of all, I would open up these windows that are in the backlight. We have shades kind of coming in here, and then I would let that natural light in to our scene. So I would light it with a little bit more of the natural light instead of working with the strobes. Now, if I did want to freeze motion still, I could still do that with the natural lighting, but we would want to use a shutter speed that's just a little bit higher. So let's say it was like a cloudy day outside and it wasn't giving us a ton of light. What we'd want to do is lower our aperture down a little bit, maybe shoot at f4.0. We're still shooting fairly wide, so a lot should still be in focus there. The other thing that we would probably wind up doing is cranking up our ISO quite a bit. So if we were shooting at 4.0 and wanted to shoot at something like 1/600 of a second, we'd probably be looking at an ISO of at least 800 and maybe even 1600 to get the proper exposure here.
Absolutely. Fun Cards is asking a question we always get. What white balance setting are you using with all these different types of lights that you're using?
Cool, good question. I'm assuming in the camera is their question. I'm using the flash white balance setting. It's just looks like a lightning bolt. And what that's going to do is it's going to match the white balance to these strobes that are set at 5600 degrees Kelvin, which is basically, it's supposed to imitate daylight at like noon. So the interesting thing, when I first started in photography, I thought flashes were warm. I thought daylight meant like, you know, a warm light, like what you would see like from the sun, but it's not. It's actually cool. So daylight means basically when the sun is like at noon and it's reflecting the blue sky. So daylight is a little bit cooler. When you get like towards the evening or here in the morning, it's a little bit warmer. So if you're taking a picture and you wanted to make it look like it's a morning shot or an afternoon shot, you want to use warmer lights. So you can put CTO gels, color temperature orange gels, on your lights to make it look like it's either earlier in the day or later at night. And then you would want to keep your white balance on the camera the same. So you would want to keep your white balance on the same setting so that warm would come through.
Dave in Scotland is wondering if you ever use light meters to measure your light. You're not using one on set today, but in a real set, do you ever use one?
Good question. I use light meters. I used to use light meters all of the time. I use them religiously. In fact, that I told everyone that I met that they should be using a light meter, and I was all about light meters. And then I met someone who was like way better than me, and they were like, I don't use light meters. And I was like, well, how do you measure your light? And they're just like, I just look at it. And so I was like, well, if you can do it, then I'm going to try to do the same thing too. I think in this case, when we are shooting tethered and I can really get a pretty good idea of what my exposure looks like, using a light meter it's not going to help me as much as being able to see my final image in a camera. If I'm shooting outdoors and it's bright and sunny and all I've got is the LCD on my camera, that, in my opinion, is a much better use for a light meter because I can't be an accurate judge of what the final image actually looks like. So I'm relying on that meter to tell me, am I properly exposed?
All right, question in studio?
Yeah, if we did not have this awesome white wall to bounce the light off, could we use a parabolic umbrella maybe here to kind of fill in the shadows?
Definitely, yeah, that would totally work. There are a couple of other options if you don't have a white wall. I know, like David Hobby, he runs Strobus. He keeps like a white bed sheet in his like strobe kit, so he'll hang like a white bed sheet. Or I think maybe it's Joe McNally who does it. He'll hang like a white bed sheet, and that becomes his giant reflector. So that's one option too. Yeah, we could use that. We could use a couple of large umbrellas here if we needed to do those as well. And if we didn't need to freeze motion again, what we could probably wind up doing is just opening up our shutter speed and letting a lot more of the ambient light in. So that's what all the cameras that are filming me right now are doing. They're not using any strobes to light me. So there's enough light for these cameras to be using, but not if they were shooting it, you know. I don't know, what are your camera settings? Yeah, 5600? Oh, then that's your white balance? Okay, perfect. And then shutter speed and aperture? I don't shoot video, so. Yeah? F4, okay, cool. So they're shooting at a similar shutter speed than I am. They're just a stop more open. So that's why they're getting more light than my camera is. There we go.
There you go. Love it. Let's go one more question, and this is kind of a basic for this frame compositing. Smart Photo from Brittany France says, if the camera moves accidentally, what do you do? Just restart the shoot?
You run around and you throw things and you kick people and you throw a temper tantrum. That's a really good question. Here at this point, we haven't really started anything that's important for the shoot. Like none of these photos that were taken just yet are going to be moved. If something does happen, like you've taken half your shots and then the camera moves, like when you've already taken the important shots, yeah, unless you want a lot more work to do in Photoshop rather, you would redo those. A lot of like heavier duty tripods will have a hook on the bottom of the center post where you can hang something like a sandbag. So in some of my shots where I really don't want that camera moving, I'll hang like a 25-pound sandbag from my tripod. So it really is like, hopefully it's gonna stay in place as much as possible.
You could also gaffer tape it down.
Gaffer tape the mess out of it.
Use an entire roll on the tripod.
Yeah. Strong arm anyone who tries to touch your camera.
Just keep me away from it.
Just keep John away from the camera. Yeah,
Awesome.
But really good question.
Really, really cool. All right, it is time for our 15-minute break. But Aaron, now that you have all of these lights set up, what do you have in store for us next?
Awesome. Well, I want to spend just a little bit more time continuing to refine our light. I think it's pretty close to there, but it's not gorgeous yet. You know, we want that light that's going to be gorgeous. In our next take, we're going to start bringing our subjects in. We're going to start working with them and trying to like pull off the concept and talk about like how we're actually going to bring this in together. So we've done all of our lighting, and keep in mind, guys, this took an hour and a half. We explained everything as it went along. But if you guys are doing this on your own, if this is your photo shoot, this probably would have taken 10 minutes. So just keep that in mind. It might seem like it's taking a long time right now, but if you're just doing it on your own, you're like, yeah, put a light up there, okay, put this over here, put that over there, maybe 10 minutes. Then we bring our models in. We think that this is gonna look decent with our models, but they might come in and it looks horrible again. So we'll do a little bit of lighting adjustments with them in place.
Right on. A lot of you in the chat rooms are big followers of Aaron Nace, and a lot of you have been watching him on Phlearn for years, and we are happy to let you know that Phlearn is giving 25% off all of anything on their site right now to the Creative Live viewers. So if you're a longtime fan of Phlearn, or you are just tuning in for the first time meeting Aaron and want to see more of his work, you can go to phlearn.com and use the discount code PhlearnCL25, and you'll receive 25% off everything on that site. Super cool.
Thank you, Aaron, for that.
Thank you
Thank
very
you, guys.
much. All right, and then the other cool thing that we have going on right now is Aaron is holding a photo contest right now at Creative Live. He wants you to submit your favorite photo using any sort of lighting scenario. So if you're shooting ambient light, if you're a natural light shooter, studio, or speed light, anything goes. Just submit your best image. You're going to submit on our Facebook page, and you can learn about all of the details at creativelive.com/blog. Aaron is going to select a winner based on creativity, image quality, and technique. So if you have photos already in your archive, pull them out. Otherwise, get shooting today and submit your photo.
Definitely do that. So we've just been starting, or we've just barely started day 2. So we have so much more to come. I love already seeing the differences between yesterday and today, the different type of compositing that we're going to do. I love having those multiple tools in my toolbox to be able to create the images that I want to create. So if you know that you are going to want to have this tool to refer back to, go ahead and purchase the course. You can do so by clicking the Buy Now button, which is right below this video feed. The cost is $149, or you can get it for $99 if you purchase before the end of the workshop tomorrow. So if you know you're going to do that, go ahead and do it now, and we will see you back here in 15 minutes.
I'm thrilled to announce an upcoming week-long event here at Creative Live, June 3rd through 8th, Adobe Creative Apps for Beginners. The Adobe apps are the most powerful software for creative professionals in any field. That's including design, photo, video, web development.
This special 6-day event